in your ears now. We getting close.
All right, we are live. We're here with Conor McCabe, the grappling strength coach and owner of Dark Horse
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Bray.
So we have the gym there in Bray, Dark Horse Training Performance for 4 years now in August. So it's been going a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you just give us a bit of background on yourself? Just like why should people listen to you? You have a BSc in strength and conditioning.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, yeah, just like briefly, like I started martial arts at quite a young age. So I started doing Kung Fu. My dad was into martial arts when he was younger. So that kind of spurred my interest in that. Didn't like team sports. So I got into Kung Fu and then did that till I was a teenager. I got into some more kind of like kickboxing and boxing as I grew up and eventually landed in Jiu Jitsu then, kind of like in my early 20s. When it comes to training, I'd always kind of been interested in training. One of my uncles growing up kind of was just like, not a member of family, never really like stood out in any huge kind of physical way. I didn't see the guy for about a year. And he showed up when I was about 15 and he had just gotten like crazy jacked. And being 15 lad at the time, I was like, "Oh, what happened to you?" And then he brought me to the gym basically to meet like personal trainer. And I was like hooked, on that kind of ever since. So that was when I was like 15. That ended up me doing sports science. In college, that was kind of like where my interests ended up lying. And then all of that kind of wrapped up then in doing what I'm doing now, having the interest in martial arts myself from a young age, and then naturally being involved in the sport all the way up through. Got into competing a little bit in jiu-jitsu, and so it just kind of naturally fell in that I'd end up doing this, and I'm very happy to be doing it, to be honest, because it's enjoyable, like, getting to work with a lot of jiu-jitsu guys and help them with their own journey and competitions and stuff. So
Yeah. Do you want to rep your gym just while we're on the line?
yeah, 100%.
Give the place a shout out.
Give it a shout out. So I train in East Coast Jiu-Jitsu in Dublin, and then I run a strength and conditioning and just personal training gym in Bray in County Wicklow. And we have a good amount of jiu-jitsu bodies there, probably about 50-50 on the members, just like Gen Pop. And then we have
Nice.
a good amount of jiu-jitsu guys there, which is great because it makes a really nice culture. Do you know what I mean? Like we've got like a competition board, which is like an annual like planner, and everyone like throws their competitions up on that. And then like some people in the gym just do like marathons, and we have a couple of guys do like triathletes and stuff like that. So it's cool. There's lots of like camaraderie in the competition. Everyone's kind of buzzing each other up to go and get after it, like whatever it is that they're getting after. So it's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And how do you find training at East Coast? Good guys out there.
Yeah, it's the best. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm spoilt in a way, like, because that's just the place that I walked into nearly 8 years ago. I'm training 8 years actually June. So yeah. And we were just like myself and my mate, who I did sports science with, and he was like living up with me in Dublin. We were working in the gym. And again, I'm like one of those people that can say it was Joe Rogan's podcast that got me into jiu-jitsu ridiculously.
There's a few.
Oh man, it's amazing how many people you meet like on the mats. I tell you that it was like fucking Joe Rogan's podcast got them into it. It's ridiculous. So yeah, like myself and my mate were always talking about doing it. And it was one of those things that we just kind of talked about for a couple of months. And then one day we were sitting in the car and we said, "Oh, will we ever just go down and do it?" Like, so I had no idea. I didn't know anything about jiu-jitsu other than watching it in the UFC. I didn't know anything about East Coast, didn't know who Dara was, anything like that. Just messaged the gym that was closest to us. So I had loads of good reviews, like saw people said really good things about it. So we were like, "Oh, cool, we'll rock down there." Went down for an open mat. Never forget it. I went down for an open mat. Dara was there, and he was like, "Yeah, guys, come on, like there, just throw a gi on, come train and all." And we did the class. There was like an intro class before the open mat, and then we did the open mat. And I'll never forget, like some fucking huge guy came up to me and was like, "Do you want to roll?" And I was like, "No way, bro. It's like my first day. Like, I just don't know what I'm doing." I was kind of like, yeah. So anyway, he cracked on, and then like this tiny blue belt girl walked up, like right, and I still train with her. She's a black belt now. I was rolling with her last week, and she comes up and she was like trying to train. I think she'd seen me say no to the other guy, and I was like, "Oh no, say it's my first day, etc., etc." And she goes, "Yeah, fair enough, but like you're gonna need to train at some stage, so it might as well be now, like." And I went, "Yeah, well, can't argue with that, like." So then she tapped me about 6 times. Absolutely battered me. I was about 90 kilos going in. Like I was big into the gym, like big into lifting weights and all. And she just fucked me up. I turned to my mate and I was like, "This is the best thing
This
ever."
is it.
Yeah. And I've been there like training nearly every week ever since.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, I did a bit of training with Dara years ago, did some privates, and we had him over for a seminar and stuff. But yeah, he's very good. He's very good.
Yeah, like it's great. Like, and training in the East Coast, the standards just really, really high. And like that's one thing that we feel even like with a lot of the white belts that come up through, like even like I'll turn to the lads and I'll be like, man, these white belts are like really sharp. They're kind of annoying. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you have to do like real jujitsu to them, like
Yeah,
to
yeah.
do whatever. And yeah, no, it's great. Like, you can always kind of go down, and even if it's like random training on a Tuesday night, where you go down to open mat, like open mats are really, really good at the moment. You get a bit of variance in bodies that kind of show up to an open mat at any given time. But at the moment, it's really, really good. So no, like I said, just kind of delighted to be training there, and the standard is just as high as ever, thankfully.
Yeah, yeah. Would you ever head down to they have a pro training session in the middle of the day? Have
Yeah,
you been
yeah,
down to that?
yeah,
That's
I
hectic.
do. That one's pretty exciting. Yeah, so we have them at 10 o'clock at the moment. I'd be lying if I said now that I've been there in the last 6 weeks. I've been busy,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah. But no, I do. That's actually one of my favorite sessions to get in because
Wicked, yeah.
it's wicked. Like the standard on the mats is really, really good. Everyone that shows up to that 10 a.m. session is there because like they want to train hard. The other thing is I really like the structure. So like sometimes, and I'm sure like you're the same. If you go to a class, sometimes there can be a lot of like technique, and I think the longer you're training, the more you just want to get down and exercise and train and get stuck in, particularly if you're like self-directed. You'll probably have stuff that you're like trying to work on. Obviously they need to teach jiu-jitsu to everyone else on the mats, of course, like, but it's nice to go down to those kind of competition style classes where it's like position training to warm up, building it up straight into moving, and then, we're away. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Like you say, I think the longer you're training, the more useful that style of training is. And like, yeah, I think once you get to kind of purple belt and above, you do end up self-directing a lot of your learning. So it's nice to have a space where you can kind of work that stuff that's been annoying you.
yeah, yeah, 100%. As you say, you'll go in with what you're working on, do you know what I mean? And when a lot of the other lads have stuff that they're working on as well, and everyone's going for it and trying to not the other lad do their thing, it makes for a
Yeah,
really
yeah,
good training.
yeah. That's great. Yeah. So maybe we'll get into just the kind of meat and potatoes here. So, like, obviously, everyone wants to know what should I be doing for my strength and conditioning. What is the one secret exercise that's going to make me better at jujitsu? So, when you're like structuring a training plan for people, I'm assuming that the first thing you're looking at is kind of like just the basics, and then as they develop, as they move through the program, you're going to start including more and more kind of sports specific stuff. So can you just talk us through what your general approach would be to making a program for like a jiu-jitsu athlete particularly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing is like, and I think you alluded to it there with saying like the special exercise that everyone's kind of looking for. What's the one thing I can do? And all. I think it's to really just try to take people from a ground up approach. Like oftentimes I often just try to make the analogy to if you took someone new in on the mats, like it really just stands to a perfect analogy of white up through blue, purple belt, etc. Like, if you take someone in who's never been to the gym before, oftentimes you'll find that a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, even if they've spent time on the mats, a lot of them haven't spent time in the gym. And I'll often make the analogy of regardless what belt you are on the mats, you're more than likely a white belt in the gym. And if you're not, if you know those guys that are a little bit more proficient in the weight room or they are a little bit stronger, they tend to stand out on the mats. Do you know what I mean? Like you'll tend to, like, lads will have a reputation for being strong, or oh, your man's really explosive, like, or oh, be careful of him, like he's a beast and all. People will say that because that physicality stands out so much.
Mm.
So the thing I always try to think about is when someone comes in, they're more than likely a white belt in the weight room. And as a result of that, it is only really building general physical qualities in people from the very offset is what you're looking for. In a lot of other sports, they handle a lot of that sort of thing in like their youth development programs, Jiu-jitsu is a little bit of a younger sport in that regard. Like I always make analogies to rugby, like, which is another like heavy contact sport, loads of injuries. You gotta be really tough to play the sport, but it's much better organized insofar as how like the sport is structured. So guys will come up through development and teenagers in rugby, you know, and they'll be lifting weights and they'll be doing their running and they'll be doing all their ball skills and they'll do all this stuff kind of as they come up. Then when they start to, you know, grow up and develop into full senior athletes, then you can hit them with tougher training and more sport specific things to make them really explosive and really contact resilient on the pitch, you know, that sort of thing. So with jiu-jitsu guys, a lot of it's the same at the start. You're just looking to treat them as if it's their development season. And that takes like a long time. If you take someone that hasn't been in the gym before, the beginner, you know, you'll often hear people say that you could be a beginner lifter, an intermediate, or an advanced lifter. But I think people widely like misconstrue how long those periods are. Like you're a beginner lifter for probably 2 or 3 years. It's a good while you become like an intermediate, you know, particularly if you're also trying to train a sport like jiu-jitsu, which is particularly tough on the body, you know, along the way. So it's just about getting them through that beginning lifting phase, building a lot of general qualities in the athlete. They don't have to do anything incredibly sport specific. You want to just make them stronger, make them more explosive, increase their endurance qualities and increase their overall fitness so that like all of those things work better. The cool thing is that's not hard to train. So you can take someone who hasn't spent a lot of time in the weight room and over time you can really develop a lot of qualities in like a year, 2 years. I don't oftentimes people coming to me saying like nearly every 2 months they're turning around and they're saying, man, I feel stronger. People are saying it to me in training, I'm injured less. They're like, wow, this is amazing. And you know, you're just like, yeah, you're just becoming generally physically prepared. You know, a lot of guys that do
Yeah,
jiu-jitsu
yeah,
are like software engineers that just like roll out of their desk after a 9 hour shift, after driving to work and driving to jiu-jitsu. Do you know what I
yeah, yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And then get on the
Just
mat and they're
frozen into that
beast.
desk posture.
Yeah, and that's impressive, like, isn't it? You know what I mean? To not have any physicality in the traditional sense of sport and then go into the sport and still be able to do really well and do the mad things that jiu-jitsu demands of us. But if you just build a little bit of physical quality in on top of that, man, your life gets so much easier. That was the big thing that stood out to me. When I started jiu-jitsu, I was what you would consider like really physical for the sport. I had nearly 10 years of lifting weights. I had done a lot of martial arts growing up, like, and I didn't find it incredibly physically taxing. Technically, it was really taxing. Yeah, you had to learn all the moves, sure, and didn't know any of them. But I would read all the time about people saying, oh, it's so tough on the body. I'm always broken up. And I kind of found myself looking around being like, no, like it's
This is fine.
tough. Yeah, yeah, I didn't think it was that bad. Like, you know what I mean? It was tough, sure, but sport is tough. So, no, it does general qualities from the off, and you can get a stunning, stunning return on.
Yeah, that's awesome. So can you talk us through then, like, just as an example, if you were to take someone in, so that first kind of 6 months, generally you're getting them in, you're going to get them squat, press, deadlift, bench press, like bent over rows. It's that style of training.
Yeah, very much so. And like what you've alluded to there is like, you know, the exercise selection of the program. So when it comes to what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the sport and then we're trying to do like a needs analysis on the sport. So as an S&C coach, I'm going to look at the sport and I'm going to say, right, what are the demands of the sport? And then as a consequence of that, off those demands, what are we then going to program for the athletes? So hopefully over time that they can develop those qualities. And the big things that jiu-jitsu really demands is you're often going to have to produce efforts for extended period of time. So we look at like endurance efforts and a lot of long isometric efforts because oftentimes we could be holding onto a grip. We could be trying to pass on a collar grip for argument's sake. You can be holding onto that for a long time. You could be having to produce force with this, you know, for an extended period of time. And that sort of quality we want to be able to build into the athlete, as well as them needing to be really strong, just in a general sense, like as jiu-jitsu demands strength. Both generally, you need to be strong in each of the kind of movements that you could express, but then also it demands a lot of local strength. So your grip needs to be really, really strong. Your adductor strength on the inside of your leg needs to be really strong so you can compress properly when you're on someone's back or pinning or doing leg locks for argument's sake. So there's a huge demand for strength alongside all of that endurance work. And then the other things that you can start to build in are the general aerobic quality. So I think if the fitter that someone is in general, the more technique per unit time is what I kind of like to think of it as, that they can produce, you know. And I think the best guys, if you look at them, and particularly I experienced this with some of our top guys when I roll with them, the amount of techniques per unit time that they produce is really, really difficult to deal with. And when you can stack that with it coming hard and it coming fast and it being the right technique, do you know what I mean? That is a nightmare in and itself to deal with. But yeah, so we want to take the sport, do that kind of needs analysis on the sport, have a look at all of those qualities that it demands of us. And then, yeah, we start looking at things like structuring the program and exercise selection. So what you alluded to there is, yeah, a lot of those big compound lifts, when we're structuring any sort of training program, all of like our key lifts being our A and B lifts in the day, they're always going to be like our primary compound things, like you alluded to, squats, presses, hinges, rows. And the reason is because we get the best bang for our buck return on that type of training. It's really neuromuscularly demanding. So oftentimes when people think of you getting stronger, they often think of it just in terms of like muscular gains. You know, I'm going to put more muscle on my frame and then I'm going to be stronger. But a lot of it's neuromuscular. Do you know what I mean? So like there's a lot of adaptation of the nervous system and that integration of the nervous system adapting, making you stronger over time, as well as building some hypertrophy and actually building some tissue. That's, you know, the sort of thing that we'd be looking at. Yeah, like once we've built all that sort of thing then into the training, that's when it can get more complicated then as time goes on. But at the start, yeah, it's just learning your basics on your pressing, your squatting, your rowing, your hinging, doing that to a really high standard as well. I think that's really important. That's probably the one thing I kind of think that the sport could do a lot more with is the high quality training, taking the training seriously, applying it at a high standard, not just going in the gym and lashing it out of it, but taking all of the training that we're trying to do, the qualities that we are trying to develop. Yeah, trying to do those to a standard that we take it seriously. And you know, it's not just an afterthought in the training. Oftentimes I think that's the biggest problem in jiu-jitsu is that the S&C and the physical prep is just looked at like as an afterthought.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. And are you talking like I suppose one of the big problems that people have when they're thinking about committing to a program like that is like I don't want to take time out of my training. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about like sessions per week, like obviously for, you know, beginners generally, you know, would you be talking about, are we talking, do they need to do 6 sessions a week? Do they need to do 1 session a week? Or are they going to compromise on the kind of 2 to 3 sessions per week range? And how tired should you be after your strength and conditioning session?
Good
Like,
question.
because I think a
Yeah.
lot of guys, you know, they would tend to, they try to go hard in the gym and then they try to go hard in the weight room. And it's kind of one of them has to give generally.
That's a great question. And to be honest with you, that's the one thing that like you do hear back a lot. People could turn around and they go, this isn't actually so bad, or I'm not doing as much here as I thought I was going to have to do. And hopefully what you want people to say is, I'm not as beat up from this as I thought I was going to be, you know? And in answer to your question, I think 2 days a week is more than enough. It's to look at it in regard of, I think oftentimes, you know, there's a difference between like lifting weights for if that's the only thing you do and you don't do sport and you just lift weights, then, you know, the gloves come off kind of in a proverbial sense. You can do as much volume as you want, you can do as much intensity as you want, you can run that to the nth degree because that's all that you do. But if you do a sport, you're lifting and your strength and conditioning, you know, by merit of what that means is just your physical preparation around that sport. And the physical preparation is always judged in context of the sport, but that includes the overall load demand of the sport, you know? So when you take something like jiu-jitsu, which is really intense on the body, if you're trying to train in like some pro sessions, even 2, 3 times a week, that's really, really tough. And it's a high volume of training, it's a high intensity of training. We have to judge the strength and conditioning then in the context of that. So we can't like burn the candle at both ends and go absolutely bananas on our weight training as well, because the wheels will just come off and you will just break the athlete. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is we're trying to attenuate the athlete's physical qualities and performance over time, while in tandem giving them the ability to rise their skill level as well. You can't do like any sort of physical preparation that takes away from the skill development of the athlete is completely defunct and is like on premise not doing its job. So you should always shoot for like a minimum effective dose approach. That's what I always try to talk about. So what's the minimum I can get into the gym and do this week that's going to improve the physical qualities that I need to improve while I'm still able to get all of my jiu-jitsu in, and I'm still able to hit all the technical improvements and all the skill marker improvements that I'm looking to hit, while in tandem building up that physical uh, quality alongside that. I can't have it detract, from that. It's not doing its job then.
Yeah, 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 that makes sense. And I think a lot of people forget that like recovery is when you get stronger, not the training session, you know. So they like you say, burning the candle at both ends, and they just end up crashing and burning. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. And I think with jiu-jitsu, it's like it's a really tough sport. Like, I can't remember the exact like lecture or module, but I do remember this particular lecture where they were ranking sports on say how like extreme they are, And they had like, well, rightly as so, like all the combat sports, extreme sports like Olympic weightlifting, do you know what I mean, or really really tough sports like sprinting and long distance swimming. They were all kind of way up, at the top of the chart.
yeah,
And I think people need to give that like the respect that it's due. I think the vast majority of people that stop training jiu-jitsu, like at some stage, at whatever stage that is, I think they do it because they can't anymore. Like I don't really know anyone, because like we all love jiu-jitsu, like we all love going down and rolling and getting stuck in and having a really good workout and seeing the lads, you know what I mean? Like everyone loves that. So aside from life circumstance taking you away, I think it's usually that your body can't hack it anymore, do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Which is fair. It's an extreme sport, so the recovery
yeah,
side
for
of things
sure.
has to be accounted for. Do you know what I mean? So you're dead right. Trying to balance it all is hard. That's the other thing to say. Don't think for a second that like there's some magical way you could line it up that would make it easy all of a sudden.
Yeah, yeah,
No way. Like if you're trying to do jiu-jitsu long term and then lift weights along the way, which again you should be doing to do the jiu-jitsu long term. But doing all that recovering and having a normal life along the way, yeah, it's a lot to balance, like
it's a
without
lot.
a
Yeah,
shadow of a doubt.
yeah, for sure. Um, and then I suppose just in terms of injuries, like you were talking about injury prevention as one of the big keys, you know, for your training, like of physical preparedness from a performance sense, but also from an injury prevention sense. So, is there anything you do in particular to like prehab people? You know, are we talking like, I suppose the big things will be like, you know, back and neck, elbows and knees, and then the kind of ankles will be the stuff that we
Yeah,
see the most.
yeah,
Maybe shoulders as well, I suppose. Yeah.
yeah, the whole
Um,
lot.
basically your full body from head to toe.
Exactly. The whole lot's fucked. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, like look, that's a huge thing. That's a huge part of it. I think it's important though, that with injury prevention, that term gets thrown around a lot. And I think people really want to think about that when they hear that, and swap that right for injury reduction, because you're not preventing injuries. There's no way, particularly in jiu-jitsu. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I often think about this, that injuries happen in a lot of other sports as like a byproduct of something happening in the sport. And what I mean by that is I get injured again, just to go back to rugby. I get injured in rugby because I take a tackle, and that ends up hurting me. And yeah, like that is fairly the intention, but the intent is to actually get the guy off the ball. Do you know, that sort of way? We're
Yeah,
trying to get the
yeah.
guy off the ball so we can get the ball back to our team and continue play for us. But jiu-jitsu, we are
Like,
actually
sorry,
trying to.
buddy, I'm just on the phone. Will you close the door? Yeah, thank you. Close the door.
And that's good. It never stops.
Never stops. Never stops. Sorry, back to you.
No, that's all. Remind me of what you were saying, of what we were chatting.
We were talking injury prevention. So the intention in rugby, we get a tackle, but it's
Yeah, so just in jiu-jitsu, sorry, it's intentional. Like, if you're going to if you're going to ankle lock the guy and you ankle lock up, like that was why you did it, and then you hurt the
yeah,
guy's
that was
ankle.
on
Do you know what I
purpose.
mean? That was on purpose. That was very much the intention. So, like, I think because of that, the way that we approach injuries has to be a little bit different. You're going to get injured if you do jiu-jitsu, without a shadow of a doubt. You're also going to get injured even if you do strength and conditioning. Like, there's not some magical way that we can construct that. Therefore, I think it's really, really important that, and this is like a huge criticism I have of jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu culture, which is the injury culture is shit. So what tends to happen is when you get in, and it's mad, okay? I'll be honest, man. I think
My
it's
elbow's
mad.
killing me. I'm just going to train through it.
Exactly. And like, look, I've been guilty of this myself, you know, but just from like, from a sports science standpoint, it's absolutely insane because, like, you know, again, I make the analogy to professional sport. If you had a guy get injured on the pitch in pro sport, like, you know what I mean? He's immediately into the physio. Like, they will just walk him into the physio's office, you know, like, he won't even be given a drink of water on the way. And like, they'll immediately test it and they'll say, okay, they'll give him a rehab ice protocol, go rest this up for a couple of days. They'll start low impact rehab, scan it up, do whatever they need to do. Ba, 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 ba. There'll be a return to play protocol. There'll be a return to contact protocol, and then return to full
Yeah,
competition,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And to contrast that with, as you say, my elbow's a bit sore. I'll just play guard on the other side for the next six
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like it's so silly. So I really try to encourage people that when they get hurt, because they will inevitably, again, no matter even how well prepared you are physically, you will get hurt. So when you do, have a physio that hopefully understands the sport and you can trust that you just get hurt, provided it's bad enough, of course. Don't go running into the physio for every little knock. But you know, if it's something that you're worried about, you think is gonna affect your ability to train, or you're going, oh, will I train because of my shoulder or my knee or whatever? Go physio, get that sussed, and then one physio appointment, if the physio's good, will turn around and say, oh yeah, it's more than likely rotator cuff issue. You need to let that rest for 2 weeks, and then you need to build strength in external rotation. And that's, you know, kind of gonna broadly handle that. And I think if people just took a little bit of that process and applied it to their own jiu-jitsu journey, I think it would make things a lot easier on them. And I think they get a lot more time and a lot more enjoyment in the sport.
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely an argument I've had with people before about like, you know, they're like worried about taking time off the mats. And I'm saying like if you leave it go, then you're gonna have to take more time off the mats later because this thing is just gonna get worse, you know. So like, yeah, that attitude of trying to deal with stuff early is definitely helpful.
And sure, what's it for, like, you know, we all want to train jiu-jitsu for decades. Like,
Yeah.
I have every intention of training until I literally can't anymore. Do you know what I mean? And I think I speak for you and just about anyone that trains. So, like, even if you had to take 6 weeks off, like, what's six?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
in
Over the
60
course of
years,
20
God bless.
years, it
Yeah,
could
yeah,
be
yeah,
something, you know what I mean? Yeah.
yeah, with a bit of luck, like, you know, yeah.
And that could be, you know, if we don't take 6 weeks now, that could be an injury that you're still dealing with in a year and a half. You know what I mean? Whereas we could sort it, we could get back.
Absolutely. Yeah. And lads don't. And then, like, it's always, I don't do that move. You know, I don't do that move because my shoulder's a bit, you know, it's like, what? To make your shoulder stronger. It's nuts.
Yeah, yeah. Now I do have an elbow injury that I've been dealing with for literally 10 years. So the
Yeah.
elbow doesn't bend, but I have seen a physio about it and he also was flummoxed. So
Sometimes you're fucked
you're
as
just
well. Like,
injured.
you know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And like, when you start dealing with like ligaments around joints and stuff like that, then you do
Yeah,
start
yeah, yeah.
getting like range of motion restrictions and all. And yeah, sorry, welcome to the sport. Yeah, yeah,
Welcome to
yeah.
the sport.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it. Like, yeah, unfortunately. But hey, would you
In
give it up if
fairness,
you could go back?
it wasn't even a jiu-jitsu injury. I've had it
Was
since
it not?
before I trained. So yeah, yeah. It's actually
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So you came
Weightlifting.
pre-battered.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah. I have a couple of little played rugby and yeah, I fucked up a clean basically and fucking jacked my
Okay.
own elbow. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Rugby's tough,
it's
man.
not about
That's a
me.
tough one on the body.
Yeah,
Like,
rugby's hard, yeah. Yeah, rugby's
yeah.
hard, yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think a lot of lads that do that and then come into jiu-jitsu, you probably have a better like expectation then of what's coming, I think.
It's yeah, like if you've played rugby before, like I don't think the physicality involved in jiu-jitsu really is anything to it doesn't bother you at all, you know what I mean? Because like you're not hitting each other in the same way that you would be hitting a tackle, you know, so you don't
Mm-hmm.
and like it's one against one, so there's not like two dudes hitting you. There's not one guy trying to pull your head off while the other guy's trying to take the ball off you, you know. It's really like I'm not saying it's easy, it's hard, like and you do feel helpless, you do feel shit, you do feel squashed, but at least it's only one dude doing it all to you.
No, man, look, I completely agree with you. I remember, so like I didn't play rugby growing up, just had like a couple of mates in college that did, but my one mate who did, and he's actually head of performance now, Glasgow Warriors.
Oh, fancy.
Man, yeah, a great coach, a very, very good coach. And but I just to your point, like I never forget, man. I didn't really understand how to rugby tackle or like just how tough that was or how hard it was on the body. And I'll never forget, man. One day, we got talking, and he was like, "Oh, you could show me how to do a takedown." And I said, "Yeah, I can show you how to do a takedown." And he was like, "Oh, I'll show you how to do a takedown, and you can show me how to do a rugby tackle." And I thought, "Oh yeah, like no problem," you know, because we were like, "Oh, it's just taking someone down either
Yeah,
stationary
yeah, yeah.
or at speed." You know, that was nice little analogy, neat little one to tie off. So I show him how to do a single leg and put him on the ground and all. And I was feeling good about myself. I was like, oh, show him a bit of wrestling. And then, you know, he steps back the 20, 30 meters and he goes, right,
I'm running. I'm
I just want
running.
you to run that line and I'm going to intercept you. And I went, oh yeah, cool, mate. No worries, man. Oh my God. He hit me so hard, bro. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
hitting the
yeah.
ground and I remember being like, I am never, ever doing that shit ever again. Like, fuck, man. I have a lot of respect for rugby players, but that is a tough one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like,
And
it's
like
tough,
someone like
man.
him who's been training like for years and years, like I only played in school, so at least everyone was like child sized as well, you know what I mean? But like being hit by a full grown adult man who's trained for years, it's like, yeah, it
I
hurts
couldn't
a
believe
lot.
it. I actually could not believe it. I was doing martial arts a long time at this stage. You know what I mean? I've been kicked in the head, seen stars plenty, but man, that was just on another level. Like it was horrendous.
Yeah, yeah. 90 kilos coming at you at like 20 miles an hour, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man. No, it's a disaster. I'm so glad I never picked that sport.
Yeah. I mean, they've done a lot now to make it safer, you know,
Yes.
just in terms of like making, you know, injury prevention is a big part of it now, and they're very sensible about it these days, you know. And
Their
even like
training's
they do a
really
lot
good.
of, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the strength and conditioning, like you're saying, the strength and conditioning is on point, like from that youth development stage, you know. So they're all coming in fairly tough, like as kids, even, you know.
Adapt into jiu-jitsu well. Like, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes the
honestly.
rugby guys who come down training, they're a nightmare. Like, you know, just strong and tough.
Yeah, yeah. Like rugby, I would say to people that rugby is basically just grappling with sprinting involved. You know what I mean? You think about like tackling. Obviously, you've got like the rooks and the mauls. It's all just like group grappling situations, you know. So like it transfers over very well, yeah. And just that physicality, that like they've no fear of like physical contact whatsoever. You know
No,
what I mean?
it's terrifying. Yeah, no,
And
the
their legs are
abandon,
also
man.
like massive.
Yeah, yeah. Ah, no way, man. Hitting a lad at that speed, like, you know, is just, and some of the
Yeah,
highlights you see online of some of the tackles, no, man,
yeah,
shiver
yeah.
down the spine, man. It's tough stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
that's after they put the safety rules in place as well. You know, I don't know if you've seen like American football where they got like guys coming in high and low at the same time,
Oh
which is
my God, man.
insane.
It just seems
Yeah.
like the gear like that they wear is just like there for show. Like when you're hitting lads at that speed, do you know what I mean? You're hitting them that hard and all. Like
That's
I don't
insane.
see the gear making much fucking difference, like to
I
be
mean, it
honest.
it stops cuts, you know what I mean? But I can't
That's
think
it.
it
Stops
does
cuts. Yeah.
much of anything else. Yeah, really.
No way.
Like you think about like that head in the middle, you know, the spear where they're like using their head to drive, and you're like, man,
Yeah.
like talk about concussion risk. It's insane.
Oh, it's cat. Yeah.
It's insane. But oh yeah, sorry, back to back to strength and conditioning. So you mentioned that you have some guys, you were talking about the competition board earlier, and that you have some guys so they'll put up the comps that they have in advance on the board. So just I suppose like that thing of like switching from like general physical preparedness to like preparing for a competition, like how would you do people's training sessions change much as you're bringing them from that kind of base training into like I suppose peaking for competition season.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and it kind of harks in some way to that question around the sport specificity, because that's something that I think gets thrown around a lot. People are often wondering whether that's like, should I be doing stuff that's more general, as we discussed, or should I be doing stuff that's more like quote unquote sport specific, you know? But no one really knows what like that sport specific part means, you know? They just see some movements that they think look like jiu-jitsu movements, and then, oh, that must be then sport specific, you know? And this is a really interesting one because we like in strength and conditioning, there are like words for this continuum, you know? And I think in many ways, this is one concept that I think has been particularly like bastardized as it's made its way into the general understanding, so it's kind of funny to see how people argue about the sport specific kind of thing. So we talked about like general qualities that we're trying to build in an athlete, right? So we're trying to make them stronger, faster, fitter, more endurance, more powerful, etc. And they're just like general qualities that we could build in any athlete and any person. And we would call that like their GPP, or their general physical preparedness, as in like if we can give them any physical task, no matter how general it is, how well would they perform at it? And they might generally perform pretty well at a general range of tasks because they're very generally physically prepared. And what we can effectively do is we can take them from this continuum of GP, and then we can move them all the way over here to SPP, and that's specific physical preparedness. And specific physical preparedness is exactly as it sounds. If we're generally prepared for any task over here, well, then here we're specifically preparing for a specific task. And that's really how you would transition an athlete as, say, competition approaches. Again, to the point, just to reminisce on the point very briefly, if you're a beginner lifter in that regard, this becomes less important. This becomes more important as you become a more intermediate and then advanced lifter, because again, at the start, any general qualities that you build is worth a lot compared to trying to eke out specifics over here, versus just that once we've built a lot of general qualities, then there's a lot more benefit to trying to build some specifics over here. So the big thing that kind of as competition approaches that we're looking at is we're looking at like, what is the athlete good at? What is the competition going to demand of them? And how can we kind of close that gap as much as we can to take the athlete from what they need to be good at, what the competition is going to demand of them, and hopefully prepare them as closely to that as possible kind of on the day. So we'll have done a lot of work in the off season to build those qualities. And then we just again look back to the things that the competition day is going to demand. So on competition day, a lot of the movements are going to happen really quickly, and they're going to happen at a really high intensity, and then they're going to have to be done for oftentimes really high effort. The intensity is going to be much higher. The bouts could be quite long in regards to the matches, could be long. The individual efforts within the matches could be quite long. So all of those qualities that we have been building around power and endurance and trying to produce force for longer periods of time, all these things will be done to a more intense degree. So we will do them closer to how they're going to look on competition day, but we'll do less of them. So the big kind of rule that governs our approach as we get from not in competition off season to approaching competition is we want to bring our volume down and we want to bring our intensity up. And the reason is because as the competition approaches, the athlete's getting more beat up because they're accumulating more fatigue from more training and more preparation. So in the weight room, we're trying to reduce the amount that we're doing over time. And that can literally be as something simple as we could have a squat movement, right? And a squat movement, something that we built strength in our key knee bend in our off season. And now we're looking to take that key knee bend movement, which is good for strength in our quad and producing high velocity lower body movements. And then from there, we're looking to make that of a more like specific movement that we're going to be able to reduce our volume in, increase our rate of force development in, and we might take something like a jump. So that's going to be our knee bend continuum of like a squat as our general physical movement for preparedness. And we're going to transition that to something more of a jump, a knee bend jump, as we're getting close to the competition. We might just see the movement transition a little bit out, a couple of weeks out, whatever our peaking phase is, but then we're just going to see that volume like physically come down. And I mean like that might be 5 sets the first week, then 4 sets the next week, then 3 sets the next week. And we might be trying to get more intense as we're doing that. I might be turning to the athlete and saying, I'm trying to get you to produce really big explosive efforts here. Or maybe we're bringing the weight down a little bit. Maybe it's a weighted jump and we've got a couple of kilos in each hand, but we can bring the weight down by a couple of kilos in each hand to increase then the velocity on the jump, So as competition approaches, we're just trying to take that approach of taking the athlete, taking whatever they were doing in their off season, in their general prep, and then with our rules to volume and to intensity, prepare them for the competition efforts that are going to have to take place. And again, to reduce the volume. And just one further point on the volume, the reason that the volume needs to come down, and this is really important for jiu-jitsu athletes to organize as a sports science concept, not their S&C, but their jiu-jitsu. The same thing should happen in your jiu-jitsu. As competition approaches, your volume should come down and your intensity should go up. You should be producing efforts that are more akin to the competition efforts that you'll have to produce. And I think that's like the key for people to really unlock is all these principles of sports science that like we're talking about here, and you're asking me as it pertains to the strength and conditioning, it pertains to the sport as well. This is baked into the you know, like, and that's great if you can. Again, one thing to just say it that Dara was very, very good at was when we had a competition, you could see the training change over time, you know, that sort of way. There was a clear focus on this is a high volume off season. This is a closer to competition specific prep. And when that continuum happens, that's money. Like that's really, really good. When you're doing that in your strength and conditioning and your skills work, your sport work, that's a winning combination.
And just in terms of like rounds per week then, so if you were to say like in general, like I think people would come in and they try and just roll hard every single day, you know, but if you were to take like hard rounds, I probably do, like I might do like 3 hard rounds a night, probably, if even that. And then obviously when you're kind of tapering that into competition, you'll be looking at doing like if you're training 5 days a week, you're probably going to do like, you know, maybe a total of like 10 hard rounds a week split between 2 or 3 days. Would that be kind of roughly what you're looking at, or is that something you'll just kind of eyeball?
Yeah, like I have to say, of all of it, the amount of rounds per week in terms of like programming that's not something that I have a huge amount of experience on and would want to say, you know, like this
Yeah.
number tapering to this number because I haven't really organized a jiu-jitsu athlete's jiu-jitsu volume like that per se, right? I tend to kind of leave that up to them a little bit more, and I don't want to make an inference on what they feel is the appropriate thing. But what I will speak to is something that you've mentioned there that I do speak about, and I do think people should think about this a lot, which is like your high quality rounds in the week, and you talk about like you doing 2 or 3 intense rounds per evening. I'd really encourage people to think about like, right, to use the analogy of like in the weight room, I'm going to do my squat or my bench is my key lift today, right? And that's going to be like my highest value return on my time set for the entire week of training, right? So I've done all my warm up sets and now I have 2 by 3 at 88% on the bench press. So those 2 triples are going to be worth the most to me, you know, out of all the training that I do in the week. So I would take my time, I'd rest appropriately, I'd make sure I'm well prepared going into the lift, etc. I try to produce a nice effort. Again, to bring that back then to jiu-jitsu, if you're going to do 5, I was at training last night, I did 6 rounds. Of those 6 rounds, probably 2 of the lads that I was training with are like on the competition team at my level, have been training for as long as I have, are really gonna push me to retain my guard. If I sweep one of those lads, it was fucking legit. Do you know what I mean? So I get people to think about that as much as they can, you know. Have a think about when you're going to train that evening, who's going to be the highest value rounds that you're going to get that day? Who's going to give you the best return on your time on the mats? Uh, Prioritize those rounds, be well rested, consider resting around before it, be well hydrated going into it. Do you know what I mean? Because like if you're going to have rounds with people, obviously you should train with everyone, like regardless, you should just train with like whoever's there on the mats. But in terms of your development, there are only a handful of guys that are going to give you that development that you're looking for. Do you know what I mean? So to have a particular think about that and to not gas yourself like trying to crush out ego half guard crossface against some chap who that's all yous ever do because yous kind of don't like each other that little bit and yous always fucking just sit there. Do you know what I mean? And then you're
Just tap
going
if
to,
you don't like it. Just tap.
yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then your like training partner goes to like, hey, can we do one? And you're like, oh man, yeah, fuck, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Squeezing the head off him for like in half guard for like 5 minutes. It's just stupid. Like,
Yeah.
do you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It definitely makes a lot of sense. You see those that Dima guy from B Team talking about like high heart rate and low heart rate rounds, you know, which I
Yes.
think is probably similar. He's talking about like today we're going hard. So this is gonna be a good training.
Yeah, like he's an interesting character. I think he's like pretty much on the money in terms of like I think he's just really trying to take some sports science principles and apply them to the training, it's just become like a bit of a buzz, the high
Yeah.
heart rate like sessions and all. But like as far as like the science goes on that, he's not off the money on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the
No, I
delivery's
actually
become
think it's a
like a
good
meme,
idea.
but it's
Like
good.
I
Like,
wasn't
yeah.
slagging him there. Yeah, yeah. I actually think it's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just, see all the memes, like, do you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
has become like, yeah, a bit of a shtick, like, but no, I think it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's an
Yeah.
interesting
It's
character,
funny.
but go on, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, he's just an interesting character in the presentation of it and stuff like that. But it is interesting to see guys come through now, that are thinking a bit more like that, and no doubt he won't be the last, which is great.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say it's interesting seeing that even a room like that can kind of benefit from just having someone who's like I wouldn't say he's like the best at jujitsu, but he's obviously a good coach, and he's able to run a practice well, which those guys have found like super beneficial.
So that's one thing that, when we talk about jiu-jitsu being like a bit of a younger sport, and then there'll be some more kind of like professional sports, and as the sport develops and it'll become kind of more like that, that's going to be one that jiu-jitsu, I think, struggles with the most. And I think that's like, because like there are some parts about jiu-jitsu culture that are toxic as fuck and just stupid, like, do you know what I mean? And this is like, oh yeah, imagine that, like, yeah, yeah. But this is one of them, like, you don't have to be like a world class competitor to be a good coach. And oftentimes, right, they are not. People that are really, really good competitors are not good coaches. It's quite like a unicorn case when someone is as equally as good a competitor as they are a coach, and they're both that good thing. Yeah, they're good at both things. Because, like, yeah, I think, again, if you look at a lot of sports, the guy who's running the training isn't necessarily like able to get in and physically compete with the guys that he's training. That would sound
Yeah,
hilarious in loads of
yeah.
sports.
Look at Mike Tyson and Customano, you know what I mean?
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see that. Like Danaher was a bit like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, never
He
competed,
was,
but
yeah,
clearly one of the best coaches.
100%. And then that makes room, doesn't it? Because he was kind of the first big one, I think, like that, certainly in the public perception of it. And then you've got Dima, and then more people will kind of come through. And look, that's probably good for the sport. And I think the athletes in the room will really benefit from that at the end of the day. Having a coach looking at their development like that and taking it seriously like they are professional athletes, which you see how well all of their lads do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, they're doing great. Yeah, yeah. Um, and then just kind of last one. This is just for me. So, you know, how strong is too strong, or how strong
Mm.
is like too much effort to keep improving. So obviously there comes a certain point where if you're building strength, you're building strength. There comes a certain point where like to get stronger, you're gonna have to put in so much effort that's gonna take away from um the time that you're using for jujitsu. So just as an example, this is just kind of for my own stuff, but say like, are we talking like a body weight back squat? Are we talking like a double body weight deadlift? Are we talking about like a body weight bench press? Or can you give us like some kind of like what I would say would probably intermediate strength standards by strength standards, but maybe what will put you at the higher end of strength by jujitsu standards?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head there, the way you kind of said it at the end, which is yes, like intermediate strength standards would kind of be the thing to aim for. Again, that does not necessarily make you strong by strength standards, but by jiu-jitsu standards. Yeah, I think like you should be baseline. I think everyone that does jiu-jitsu should be baseline aiming for like close enough, and keep in mind that for women, it's going to be a little bit smaller, probably a zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.3 reduction on any of these numbers that I'm about to say, but you'd be looking at probably trying to get anywhere between a 1 to 1.5 times body weight bench. I think that's important because there's a huge amount of upper body demand in jiu-jitsu as much as there is lower body demand. The lower body demand's a bit more of a dexterity question, whereas the upper body demand is more of a force component absolute, where you're just looking to produce a lot of force with the upper body. And then on the squat and deadlift, like you would realistically be wanting to put away a 3 to 4 plate deadlift and a 2 to 3 plate squat, I think, again, which we would agree is probably like an intermediate strength standard, but for jiu-jitsu, I think that makes you like mutant strong. Like, I
Yeah.
do, like, and I think you'll agree with me, that's not unattainable stuff.
Yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
couple of
Yeah.
years of training, sure, but like anything worth doing takes a little bit of time. But the one thing I'd say just on that as well, one day you're not going to be able to do jiu-jitsu anymore, unfortunately. None of us will. At a point, you're just going to have to stop. But you're going to be in the gym the next week. You're going to have to
And
keep
keep
lifting
squatting for life.
weights and keep
Yeah.
squatting for a long time. So keep that in mind, that if you're kind of on the fence of whether is this something that I should get stuck into, are these strength standards something I'm going to dedicate time to trying to build towards and all. Yeah, at the moment you're building towards it like for jiu-jitsu, but it's really something that's going to help you for your entire life. uh, a lot of people that I train in my gym are like a little bit older, and like I can't tell you the value it gives them. And that's going to be all of us one day, and we're all going to have really benefited from putting a couple of decades of lifting weights behind us at that
Absolutely.
stage. So yeah, you really are ticking so many boxes for yourself. It's almost like the the benefit on the mats it brings you is just a happy consequence of making yourself
Yeah.
so much stronger and healthier. Do you know what I mean, for life? So no, like if you don't do it. You won't believe the difference it makes. And anyone that trains like yourself, mate, gets it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
a
for
game
sure.
changer.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then just kind of finally, do you do any of the odd lifts? So would you, like sandbags, overhead kettlebell stuff, farmers carries, that kind of stuff, or is that just something you program in like as needed?
It's not something that I have a huge amount of experience training with myself. I used to work in a Southside gym in Sandyford. And that was like there was a lot of powerlifting, strongman, bodybuilding would kind of go in there. So I've definitely messed around with a lot of like sandbags and logs and bar,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
over the years with the lads. But I did
Good
have
crack.
it is great crack. I did have a 120 kilo sandbag in Dark Horse there up until about a year ago. But everyone would just get pissed off when they would try to lift it. And I'd show them how to
And
lift it,
that's
and they'd
heavy
be,
for a handbag.
man, sandbag is really heavy. Like I was getting the ones from Cerberus Strength, and they only have like certain sizes. And yeah, I think I just got. I saw all the other ones that went up really heavy, and I was like, I'll get one of the smaller ones. But yeah, 120 kilos is still disgracefully heavy. So we got
It's
rid of
very
that.
heavy. Yeah. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. So a lot of that lifting is cool, but the one thing I'd say to people is like just be careful how much you chuck at your body. If you're doing a load of jiu-jitsu and then you're doing a load of
Absolutely.
mad lifting as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Is my camera dead there for you?
Yeah.
All right.
Only
I
just
don't know
stopped
what's
there a
happening
couple of
here.
seconds ago.
Yeah. Hold on one sec.
Yeah, it's
Well,
giving me a
that
little
might be our
timer.
cue to
That's all right. That's all right. We got 54 minutes in, without technical
54 minutes.
difficulties. So
Let's go
that's
going.
pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what's happening here, so maybe we'll just leave it at that. That's the universe
That's all
telling us.
right. Yeah.
Oh no, we're back.
Ah, there we go.
Computer says no moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, just before we go, do you want to just tell everyone how to find you? Tell everyone how to get in contact with you.
Absolutely. So yeah, Grappling Strength Coach on Instagram, and then if you're in the Bray area, my gym's Dark Horse Bray, Dark Horse Strength Performance Bray. You won't find a better gym in the Wicklow area. Yeah, like look, if you're listening to this, man, and you do jiu-jitsu, like just lift weights. Like I know it sounds mad. I think a lot of like martial arts culture lads don't like the gym, and they think it's all like trying to look good and stuff like that. You're gonna keep yourself on the mats for an extra 2 or 3 decades.
Yeah,
And if you love jiu-jitsu like I do and like you do, Danny, like you just want to keep fucking training. So
absolutely.
go learn how to lift weights. It'll have such a feedback return you won't believe.
Well, thanks a lot. That was super informative. Like, I really enjoyed that. So
Likewise,
yeah,
thank you so much for having me on.
thanks. We'll get you back next time.
Yeah, 100%. Appreciate it. Fair play to
See
Danny.
you soon.
See ya. Bye-bye.
East to West Coast, vibe like we supposed to. Only choking in your ears, now we getting close to.